Hey folks, I wanted to make a quick video talking about this whole D&D scenario. Okay, this is not PCG related. On this here corner of YouTube.com, we usually talk about paper computer games, but it is paper computer game related in a sense. I think D&D is the closest what it would look like if PCGs ever got big. So basically the gist of it is, Dungeons & Dragons is published by a company called Wizards of the Coast, and basically, hey, they publish the game, so they have the right, in theory, to do whatever they want with it. But they decided to create something called the Open Gaming License, the OGL, which lets other people use their content. And that's a lot like how in our paper computer game community, we're all always sharing and taking each other's ideas, building on them, creating new games. And that's sort of what the OGL does for Dungeons & Dragons. It lets people use some of their content from Dungeons & Dragons to make their own things. And there's been in recent years, the D&D community has gotten just really, really big. It's gotten massive fan channels. It's got massive, even other companies sort of cashing in by making, supplements to go with D&D. Is this a good thing for D&D? I would say pretty objectively, yes, because this has made their community kind of explode. The fact that, this is a very free environment where anyone can build on it means a lot of people built on it, and that generates a lot of excitement around the name Dungeons & Dragons. And, if lots of people are playing D&D because, it's such an open and free thing, then people are going to go back to Wizards of the Coast and buy Wizards of the Coast's D&D manual. So this just makes sense for everyone, This is just a good system. It just, this is just straightforward and it works for everyone. But, this does kind of fly in the face of how traditional media companies work, right? Think of, DC or Marvel Comics, think of Disney, think of, any of these companies, they work by being we are the only person who owns this property. No one else can make a comic book about Superman without our permission. No one else can make a cartoon about Mickey Mouse without our permission. And, so because of that, we get to profit endlessly off of those characters. That's been the traditional sort of model. D&D starts to sort of go in a different direction. They sort of start to be hey, let's share. Which is a weird, scary thing, because if you're thinking, as a company, if you're a company and you own a thing, if you're thinking, if I share, then other people could take my work. What if I create a character and then some other guy makes a huge movie about my character, becomes a millionaire, and I get nothing from it? So yeah, you can totally see why a company wouldn't want to just freely share their content. That is a really, really weird thing to do. But I did just say, it's the fact that D&D has been doing this has been a huge benefit to they've gotten big because of that. So the latest thing to happen is that recently there was a leaked version of the new updated Open Gaming License, which is going to be more restrictive. It's going to say, hey, you can't use our stuff quite as much. There's been a massive community backlash to it. I'm just seeing tons of YouTube videos in my timeline talking about this. And mind you, I'm not a huge D&D player. I've played it once or twice. I used to play it with Chris back when we were younger and a bunch of other friends. But I'm not a massive D&D fan. I'm not watching a ton of D&D videos on YouTube. But all of a sudden, this is showing up. So I think the reason for this is because we had that freedom and suddenly it was taken away, and that doesn't feel very good, does it? If D&D had always been operating on the same principle that, all the other media companies do, then no one would be upset because, they haven't been free from the beginning. It's only because we tasted it. We felt how good it feels to have this free community where everyone can freely reuse this content. And now we feel like it's being taken away, and that is something that people don't like, very understandably. And also, this backlash is clearly hurting Wizards of the Coast so much so that they had to sort of back down a little bit. because, companies that are, building their whole brand around building content for D&D are now saying, like, actually, maybe we'll make our own thing instead. I don't want to have to be constantly paying royalties to Wizards of the Coast. I mean, you could make the argument, like, what's so bad about paying royalties? But for, a lot of creators, you just can't really afford that. Wizards of the Coast, because their brand is so valuable, they can charge a lot. So why did they do this? Why did they backtrack? Well, if they can see that it's a benefit to them, why do they do it? Well, they get scared, we're still living in this traditional ecosystem and they are still a company. Their goal is to make money. And here they are seeing all these other people who are making money off of things built around Dungeons & Dragons. So they think, hey, we should be making that money. Why can't I get the money? I want the money. So they say, hey, maybe we should pull back a little bit. Maybe we should stop letting people do that. But, that triggered the backlash. So what does this mean for us, for paper computer games? Well, first of all, I think it's broader than that. I don't think it just applies to us. I think it applies to everything, but I think we, as paper computer games, we're sort of uniquely positioned. We are I think we are sort of the vanguard of the landscape that is to come. As I said before, I just think it's smarter for any company to share their content, and it's very hard to get a company to do that for long because companies' goal is to make money. So of course they want to do what immediately makes them the maximum amount of money as quickly as possible. But, look, in the long run, they're building such a richer, deeper, more interesting community, such a better game by having a community that freely shares among themselves. So I think it's better advice for everyone. If you were to just immediately make me CEO of Marvel Comics, bam, I'd be like, or DC or whatever, I'd be like, okay, let's make Superman public domain, which is crazy, right? That's like institutional suicide. You're suddenly giving up your all your rights over this property. But think about it. If Superman were public domain, how many more people would be making Superman comics, would be making Superman movies and stuff? And Superman as a character, as a figure, would be better. He would get richer. There would be more lore. There would be more attention drawn to the name. And that would be more money in the pockets of DC. In the long run, it is a benefit. And I think that we as paper computer games, we are ahead of this curve because we already operate in that way. Granted, we're a small fan community right now. We are not a large corporation. We're not even really a corporation. I think part of what has always made paper computer games, whatever strength it has, whatever popularity this thing has, its strength is totally built on the fact that it's shared, that we all feel free to share each other's creations, build on them. I create a character, you reveal that character's backstory. I tell a story, you make a sequel to it. I, create a planet, you reveal the ancient past of that planet. I don't know. We all build on each other's ideas. We all take what the others have done and do it in new ways. That's how the PCG community has always worked. That is the strength of this community. If we were to ever get bigger, if we were to ever get to the size of Wizards of the Coast, that kind of makes me worry a little bit. What if we did turn into a company? What if, as we got bigger, what if we were to bring people in here? What if we were to hire more people? Eventually, we'll have a board of directors. Eventually, we'll have to have a CEO, and then there will be that pressure to make money. What if we end up making a decision similar to what Wizards of the Coast is making right now? We're in, it is sort of just an inevitable thing. It's easy, as outsiders to put ourselves outside of that and be like, no, we'd never do that. But the function of a company is to make money, and the people in that company, sort of have to do everything they can to make as much money as possible. So, and it's really, really hard to make a decision that doesn't seem like it's going to make money in the long run. How do you avoid that? I don't really know, but I think a big part of it is sort of, understand, you have to have, the boldness to really stick to your convictions around this. this is a benefit. And yeah, you can probably get, short term get more sales if you, like once you're already big, if you were to suddenly cut that off and be like, no, only we can sell that kind of stuff, that would probably create more short-term profits. But that's not better for building a community. That's not better for building a richer universe, for fleshing out these characters in the biggest way they can be. We are the vanguards, and I think that if we really do want to get ever as big as D&D, by the way, if you're writing comments about that, I do realize that's a pipe dream right now, but I'm fully aware. But I do think that, our biggest strength is our ability to share, our ability to work with each other, our ability to build off each other. I think that's the direction things are going to go. I think that, in the future, you could see more and more companies, little by little, bit by bit, start to be pressured to go in this direction because, it just is to their advantage. If you go, and as Wizards of the Coast is discovering, if you go a little bit in this direction, if you share your stuff a little bit, and then you try to take it away, the fans revolt, they get mad, you damage your own business. It's hard to walk away from that. So I think that fact, the fact that the companies will experiment a bit, and if they get scared and try to back out, they'll face pressure. I think that's a force that over time, maybe it'll take hundreds of years, but I think that is sort of where our media ecosystem is eventually going to go. We're vanguards of that. We're way ahead of the curve. And if we ever get big, I want us to just stay really, really sure. I really want us to stay really focused on this goal of being free, but continuing to share our stuff with each other. I don't ever want us to walk away from that. I don't know what the exact system would look like. I don't know how we would, write the legal framework, because we still do exist in this capitalist country. That is the way that the environment around us is. You can't ignore that. If we were to ever get big, you would have to think of a really smart framework to work that out. But I do think it's doable. I do think that it is the way to go. I don't think there's any other way to go. So yeah, that was all I really had to say. I just thought that this whole D&D scenario, it's one example of a much larger thing. I think it's showing the way things are going to go, and I think we're well positioned to ride that wave, to be at the forefront of that wave. I think we're also just moving into a new era. I think it's exciting to see where things are going to go. Not just for D&D, not just for PCGs, but for everything, for our media landscape as a whole. So yeah, let's do this. By the way, I saw an interesting video by YouTuber Legal Eagle, which talks about the legal implications of this, and he pointed out that it might not even be possible to copyright the rules of a game anyway. So D&D might have no leg to stand on in the first place. You might not even need the open gaming license. I don't think that would really apply to PCGs as much, because our rules are just you say this and I'll tell you if it works, but nonetheless, thank you folks so much for watching. You folks are the best as always, and PCG later.